Welcome, Sens Talk.
Russell winds in, feeds it back across the strike, and scores! Brady Tkachuk makes it 2-0. Claude Giroux, hit alone, scores!
Tim Stutzock cross, Tkachuk score! The captain, Brady Tkachuk, buries it with 1:18 to go.
See you later. Go, Sens, go. Welcome to Sens Talk. My name is Brandon Plant, and I am your host. We have some breaking news today coming out of the nation's capital as the Ottawa Senators have signed free agent center and Stanley Cup champion Nick Cousins to a one-year, $800,000 deal. But before I break that all down, I have a couple things I wanted to talk about quickly. I know I've been gone the last couple weeks, and I have a few very, very good reasons why. Firstly, I just started a new job. I'm a comms coordinator for a festival here in Ottawa, and the festival is coming up in just under a month. So it's been really hectic and very, very busy, and I just started. So there's a lot to do, a lot to learn, and not a lot of time. On top of that, I've been traveling. I just went to Alberta, to Calgary, and Banff, hiked up Rawson Lake with my girlfriend, which was incredible. I really, really, really recommend going to the Rockies one day if you can. Just absolutely stunning, the Rockies out there in Alberta. And most importantly, look, I love making these videos. I have no regrets whatsoever, but I've been doing them for 12 years, all right? I've been doing essentially a video every other day for 12 years in a row, and just like anything in life, you need a break. You just need a few weeks off to recharge and refresh. And that's exactly what I needed. That's what I did. And let's just say I'm fully recharged. I'm completely fired up, and I'm ready to go full steam ahead going into the next season of Sens Talk and another great, hopefully, season of your Ottawa Senators. And we're coming back with a bang to kick off September, as this weekend, the voice of the Ottawa Senators, Dean Brown, joins the show again. Always a pleasure to talk to Dean. He's an absolute beauty. So stay tuned for that in the next few days, and a lot of other great interviews and videos are planned and already done. So stay tuned for that. I'm not going to spoil it. We have a lot of content locked up and ready to go. So with, the rookie tournament and camp and preseason and, of course, the regular season all ramping up here, and we're just under 6 weeks away now from the start of the regular season. So I'll keep it very simple. A lot of content is coming your way in the next few weeks and, of course, the next few months as we cover your Ottawa Senators for our 12th season here at Sens Talk. But yeah, that's about it. Again, I apologize. I'm sure you all understand, though. Sometimes you just got to take care of yourself, and you got to take care of life stuff. So needed a few weeks off, wanted to travel, start a new job, but we're back, and we are back with a vengeance. My goodness, so excited to start putting out content again. Some huge interviews, some big videos, and of course, your Ottawa Senators returns. So with that, let's get back into the reason you clicked on this video as we talk about Nick Cousins, the newest Ottawa Senator. Now, what I find really interesting about this is, look, a few weeks ago, I put out a video basically talking about, a few weeks into the free agency period, what are some depth options the Ottawa Senators should look at in free agency to really shore up the depth on this team? Because for some time now, I've been saying, look, I like the middle six additions we brought in. I like the top four, additions we brought in as well. But the third pairing, which we'll talk about in an upcoming video for sure, and the fourth line, the depth is very scarce, to say the least, all right? I mean, again, we'll talk about the third pairing in a future video, but the fourth line going into camp literally yesterday was Noah Gregor and some AHLers or fringe NHLers. I mean, Noah Gregor is not exactly, he's a fine NHLer, but he's not a well-established Stanley Cup champion, veteran guy, right? We didn't really have much on that fourth line, and that's exactly what Nick Cousins brings to the Ottawa Senators. He's a veteran, he's played a lot of games in the National Hockey League, and he's a Stanley Cup champion. Three things that are very, very ideal for your fourth line. So I love this signing. I said they should sign him in my video a few weeks ago, and they did just that. And in fact, according to Bruce Garriock, they sniffed around Nick Cousins around, the beginning of free agency, around July 1st. But Nick Cousins at the time wanted more term and more money. Look, I'm not going to lie. I like Nick Cousins as a player. Would not go more than 1 year at around this, AAV. So glad they said no to that and said yes to this, because this is a much more team-friendly deal. You're making essentially league minimum for 1 year. There is no risk and a lot of reward potentially in this signing. Now, according to Puckpedia, after signing Nick Cousins to, this $800,000 deal, the Ottawa Senators have $1.1 million in projected cap space going into the regular season, with 22 active players right now on the roster, compiling 13 forwards, 7 defensemen, and 2 goaltenders for that cap hit. Now with that, that's enough numbers and rambling and talking about my life. Let's get into Nick Cousins, the player. Nick Cousins is a 31-year-old center who is 5'11", so he's not the biggest player in the world, but my goodness, does he ever play like a massive player. He's a very physical player, and he's an absolute agitator. He's a rat, and I think you saw the thumbnail. You probably saw the rats. There's a reason we put that. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Let's just say Nick Cousins, not exactly the most popular player in the National Hockey League. Let's just say that. Now, speaking of the National Hockey League, his career in the National Hockey League has been pretty solid. Last year in 69 games, nice, with the Florida Panthers. Actually, the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. Got to plug that a few times. This is a Stanley Cup champion we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. Last year in those 69 games, he compiled 7 goals and 8 assists for 15 total points with a Corsi for percentage of 54.5%. If you don't know what that means, essentially, way more often than not, when he was on the ice, the Panthers had possession of the puck, which is a very good sign, especially for a fourth-line center who will likely be in defensive situations. He was also ranked number 6 on the Panthers last year in hits, and has a knack for being a clutch player with 3 game-winning goals, tied for 4th with the Panthers last year, including a massive OT series winner against the Maple Leafs, as we all remember. As well, had a 53.1% face-off rate. Now, he's played just under 600 games in the National Hockey League at 592, scoring 71 goals and 109 assists for 180 points in those 592 games, with a Corsi for percentage in those games of 51.5%. Again, I bring that up because, you know, Nick Cousins is not a fighter. He can throw them down, I guess, but he's not a guy that's known for fighting. This is not like an Austin Watson type of signing. This is a signing that, again, like I said, he's 5'11", but he plays like he's 6'4". He's a very physical player, and he's an agitator. He's a rat, you know. He's going to try to get into your head. He's going to try to draw penalties. He's going to try to make people drop the gloves and agitate them. And, you know, most importantly, he plays with that physical edge. So, you know, around the boards, keep your head up around a guy like Nick Cousins. He's very physical. He won't lose those board battles. And most importantly, for a center, obviously, through the middle of the ice, he's very strong. So in both ends of the ice, he's a guy that you can basically trust. And that's exactly what you want from a veteran fourth-line center who, you know, shockingly, is not really a penalty killer. The last 2 years with the Florida Panthers, he's played like 6 minutes on the penalty kills. So I don't think he's going to be a penalty killer, but at the same time, who are you really going to put on the penalty kill on the Ottawa Senators this year? So I would definitely give him a shot, especially in preseason. See what he can do. Maybe you can develop him into a penalty killer, because we definitely need, you know, that penalty killer that can play down the middle. We don't really have that right now, maybe Amadio, but you also need a second wave of the penalty kills. So I think this is a guy that can definitely get an opportunity on the penalty kill, but he's certainly not known for his penalty kill abilities. But again, what he's really known for is his grittiness, his tenacity, and his agitation. I mean, my goodness, the Sens have a team of agitators, of rats. I mean, you got Kachuk, you got Crookshank, you got Clevin, you got David Perron, you got Nick Cousins now. I mean, my goodness, you got some absolute pests on this team, and I'm so excited. And my goodness, how am I forgetting Ridley Gregg as well? You got some pests on this team. The pesky Sens, whatever the hell you want to call them, they're not going to be fun to play against, and that is so exciting for me. You know, for so long we've been saying that Brady Tkachuk's been the only guy on the Sens that's been dropping them, and has been physical, and has been willing to go that extra mile and, you know, be that agitating presence. The Sens slowly have been carving a team to fit that motto, and finally, it's safe to say, in my opinion, they are fitting that motto for sure, with 5 or 6 players arguably going to be on the roster next year, full-time, that are full-time agitators and rats. So that's beautiful to see, and again, he's a strong defensive player, which is desperately needed for any bottom 6 in the National Hockey League, especially the Ottawa Senators bottom 6, who frankly didn't really have any fourth-line center. You know, Adam Gaudette probably was the best option for the fourth line, and no offense to Adam Gaudette, that's not exactly sexy. Nick Cousins is a sexy asset to bring in for the fourth line purely because of those strong defensive abilities and agitating abilities and Stanley Cup champion pedigree as well. This is a guy that brings a lot of experience to the locker room, which once again we have to remember is one of the youngest in the National Hockey League. And we don't really talk about it that much. There's been some huge additions and subtractions the last few months. So I'm really excited to see how they all mesh together. There's certainly a different persona, if you want to call it that this team is going to be bringing next year. Again, the pesky Sens, whatever the hell works for you works for me, because they're going to be playing that style for sure. Now, as I've already mentioned a couple times, this brings much needed depth to the bottom six. I mean, again, we desperately needed it. And now look, with this signing, that fourth line looks much better. I'm much more comfortable with the depth in that bottom six and throughout the organization. If there's an injury or two, I'm much more comfortable in a short-term gap anyways, that we should be okay now, or at least much more okay than we would have been just a few days ago, literally. But my ideal fourth line going into the year would be friend of the show, Angus Crookshank, Nick Cousins and Noah Gregor as their fourth line, with Zach McEwen and Adam Gaudette as the next man up, as a 13th forward potentially, and as the first call-up. So let me know what you think about that potential fourth line in the comment section down below. I also wanted to mention this. Steve Stais, I kind of mentioned this with the veterans he's bringing in and the experience he's bringing in to one of the youngest teams in the National Hockey League, but he's also targeting cup winners. This is the third Stanley Cup champion that Steve Stais has brought in this offseason. So it's safe to say they wanted to get peskier, they wanted to get more veteran ability, and some Stanley Cup champion pedigree as well. They clearly accomplished all three things this offseason. Now, Timmy Sens on Twitter showed a really interesting poll from The Athletic that said that just under 29% of the league voted Nick Cousins as the most disliked player in the league. You can see it on your screen. He's had some run-ins in the past with the Ottawa Senators as well. So, yeah, this is a guy that you don't want to play against. And I bring this up because, look, I don't know the guy, of course, but according to journalists like Johnny Lazarus, for example, he says he was very well liked in the Florida Panther locker room. So, this seems to me like a guy that you would hate to play against, but you love to have on this team. So, welcome to Ottawa, Nick Cousins. A great, great signing. A signing that Ottawa desperately needed, where you get that fourth line center who can provide some much needed defensive strength to that fourth line. And brings a lot of tenacity and agitation to an already pretty pesky Ottawa Senator lineup. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And with that, I'll see you in a few days for the Dean Brown interview, and a lot more content coming your way very, very soon. So with that, thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Go Sens, go.